Hello, my creative collective. Welcome to Wednesday, May 18th. This is coming out a little late, and I realized I did not do a daily creative for yesterday, so just bear with me. The energies have been a bit intense this week, and I'm just trying to roll with it and take care of myself in a way that honors me and my energy as well. So if my cup is not full, emptying out here will do no good, right? So, um, yesterday I had a very interesting experience, and I'm just sharing it here. I don't know if anyone may benefit from it, but um, I woke up and it sounded like plates shattering. Like I just got this image of things shattering and falling slowly to the ground, and not in a way that was destructive, but just that something was like coming apart that needed to. And yesterday was it was a very heightened sensory day, some anxiety running high, and I realized after the fact that you realize that you're awake, but then it's almost like these different layers to it, and it's also having the I guess the sense of humbleness that you may not have. There's different layers to it, and you know that you're awake, but the degree of that shifts and changes. So it kind of felt like third eye and crown chakra got like blasted open, and all of this information was coming to me with this intensity. So I really had to disconnect, and even now I have my curtains closed a little bit just to make for a more sensory friendly space. Um, yeah, I don't know. I hope everyone's doing okay this week. Yeah, I hope everyone is, because I know the energies are running high, and um, little bits of little bits of ego death, I think, coming up. But nonetheless, let us do this, my friends. So I would like to invite the angels, my guardian angels, my spirit guides, protectors, teachers, and their healing energy to this space. And I ask that it is a safe and brave space that allows for the fullest expression of our light, humanity, ascension, and healing. All right. So I'm going to use, in a departure from the norm, I'm going to use the journey of love oracle rather than the hero's journey, because I feel like there's just a little more heart space, you know? Um, Not that there wasn't before, but it's hard to explain. It's okay though. Spirit, what messages do you have for my daily creatives, please? The choice. Have you made choices recently? How are we taking responsibility for them? I know I kind of, yesterday, the way I think about it, I was reflecting on it today, and just, thinking about how I showed up for myself and other people yesterday, and what it meant to declare certain boundaries, and just realizing that a lot of my energy it almost felt like a pop bottle, like the twisting of the cap, and just that sound, right? I always wonder if my cat is like, why are you drinking the hiss? Like, why are you drinking why are you drinking an anger? Right? Like, I don't drink pop at all anymore, but but that idea of this sort of burning off of things, a burning off, and not in a way that's necessarily destructive, but just the illusion, again, the breaking of glass, like, but it's like a shattering, right? Which maybe was necessary to take place. We also have acceptance. hmm And, not to suggest that my experiences reflect some kind of whole piece, parts of the whole, sure, but I didn't know if anyone else had felt like that. So, um, and just realizing the ways that we meet ourselves, and, leaving a comment somewhere, and then I ended up deleting it because afterwards I was like, well, it said what I needed to say, but also I just didn't show up the best, and I didn't want to leave that energy residue places, right? So because the image of the pop bottle and the fizz, like the initial like sound of it came to mind, and I was like, ooh, I don't really want to spill that around. So, and just feeling like shrinking sometimes. I'm going to put out another Course in Creativity video at some point this week, hopefully. But again, just honoring the need for rest. So I'm going to start to pull cards because I keep chatting at you. 444 on the time. Um, Sacred Convergence. Yeah, it feels like a turning point of some kind. Not just speaking personally here, but also like I think that we're at some kind of turning point in a larger sense. And I think that the collective shift is being reflected individually and inward. And I think transits like the ones happening right now are excellent times to really understand that and to see it. Because realistically speaking, our energies do make up the whole, right? So in a way, it would make sense that that what's going on inside of us is really a microcosm for a much larger picture that's unfolding energetically speaking. It could be that I'm usually quite attuned to the collective, but but I think with this choice and acceptance, I think that there's, there was like a breaking apart. Yesterday I kept, meditating on energy and also sitting with myself and my own energy and then the collective energy and how they were, the interplay between them. Because it just felt like such an intensity, and I saw this sort of like an unhooking of a cable that was being sent back. So it was really interesting because that came across as, personal healing, but that could also mean some kind of pattern breaking. And it could be that's where the shattering of that sound came from, right? Yeah. So we're going to dive in and pull some additional cards here. Let me see which one I want to pull from. Usually I have this set up in advance, but we'll go with the Muse Tarot here. The Muse Tarot. Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative collective, please? Whoa. Okay. Four of Wands. I get this as more community. Yeah, I feel like there's a way that people are helping you, or you're allowing yourself to be helped and really taking that in a way that is a departure and kind of maybe a break from what has felt grounded for you before. I'm getting some of that energy. And just maybe too that this is also about something that's more stable for you. Something that's more stable for you. That is like, that draws you into the circle of something. So sometimes we can feel like when situations unfold, we're on the outside of them looking in. Even if this is like relationships, like personal, like romantic relationships, right? We can feel like we're on the outside of them because we're not really being seen, right? Further to the crown chakra and third eye opening point. Well, I should say like clearing. Teal Swan, there was a short that came up on YouTube this morning, and I had just popped in and then popped back out, but that came on among other things. But one of the things that she talked about was how we need to stop loving people and assuming that that is enough. And instead we need to start to understand them, because if we want to, she used like a jellyfish, right? The example of that, where she was saying that if we want to love a jellyfish, we need to understand that it needs to stay in the water, right? We need to understand the people that we love. We need to understand them and make that the primary, like maybe not primary, but among the main things that we do to show love, to also allow ourselves to be loved, is to want that back and to accept it back and to feel comfortable with that back. And part of being understood is allowing ourselves to be seen, right? So what does that mean? Well, it means letting down guards and barriers, but also just sitting with ourselves, right? Just sitting with ourselves first and foremost. And I mean, sitting with ourselves, right? And that's how that's how other people are able to sit with and see us, right? That's how that process works. So Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative collective, please? 9 of Cups. I feel like I feel like you are shining right now. And the 9 of Cups is like a wish fulfillment card, but I feel like there's a way that the wish that you had looked externally to be fulfilled is something that is connected to internal processes taking place right now within you, and that maybe I'm hearing unexpected. unexpected, and the Knight of Swords. Could be a knight. It could be a Knight of Swords, an air sign coming in that you weren't expecting, which is fine. I mean, not fine. It's it's good. What am I saying? Oh my gosh. This Nine of Cups, though, I just get this image of. I get this image of the way the light catches. I'm seeing stained glass windows. How in I house sat in downtown Toronto in in a wealthier area, and it was they had a stained glass window in like hanging in the main window of an older home, right? I think the home was probably built in like the 30s or 40s, and the way the light would catch it during the sunset, and it would just shine right through and have these rays of light. Like I almost see these as being rays of light surrounding you right now that maybe you can't see because it's not that you're underwater. You're sort of in a place where you're focusing on one sense over the others so that they can speak to one another in an effective way. 1111 on the time. So that they can speak to one another in an effective way. That goes here. Yeah, let me move this over. So we have the Ten of Wands. I feel like there was that this would definitely be the hook that we are letting go of, and like it's an unhooking from something, and be it things that we are doing collectively. There's a congresswoman in the States who said once that policy is a love language. And I was like, oh, that's very true. And I feel like I don't know what it is right now, but I feel like there's different things that are being rearranged with that. Different things being rearranged around that or that idea. So it's almost like maybe there's a collective unhooking from things that just aren't working. But also, I think the real empowerment is the decision of what we want now, right? Like, what do we want? Because it's hard to decide when you're trying to run underwater with a tire tied around your waist, right? So this is about reconnecting to something and deciding. Like, we're in a more intentional and the space of intentionality, as opposed to this just being adrift like a bag in the wind blowing down the street, right? We're taking on a greater sense of direction. And I was even, I was watching, I think it was last night, just briefly before I went to sleep, but it was I think Christina Lopes put out a video about miracles and just the idea of expanding your aura, and not expanding it in a way to take up to like it. Just watch the video, it's good. But it was expanding your aura in a way that allowed you to sit in it and to just feel the energy. And I feel like there's like this definition around yourself, but like a greater self-definition and a boundary around yourself. And maybe that's what this is. Like, that's why the Nine of Cups, this to me is coming across as more of a process that you're engaged in right now, right? More of a process. Which is interesting because, when people say, like, how do you manifest X, Y, and Z? Well, I think that this is more of the process that that's becoming real to you, and you're understanding that the lamp it's outside of you, and the real wishes are coming from within you, right? It's a process that's coming from within, not from here. So. And, the beautiful thing about this release, like the unhooking of things that I saw yesterday, was that this is in the position of like things that could become a tower if we're not paying attention to them and tending to them on a regular basis in our energy. So I think that there were things that you were carrying that were not yours. They just weren't yours. And the colors coming out of this, I've never really seen this before. But it's the colors of the solar plexus and crown chakra, purple and the yellow there, right? So it's almost like where will is meeting with this higher vision that you have, which is beautiful. That's a beautiful energy. And I think so then we have the Seven of Swords showing up in the position of the protagonist, which is very interesting. And I think this is being able to see all sides of something now, right? Being able to see all sides of something. And I think this is, this is quite consistent with what I've been reading and watching about different levels of spiritual awakening. And not that there's a hierarchy, but there's just ways that, as we heal, different aspects of our energy become available to us because blocks clear, and things shift in ways that open us up in ways that we couldn't before. So it's also just giving ourselves the flexibility to know that it doesn't say anything about our worth and value as, healers or teachers or guides for people, that we're all engaging in that process on a regular basis, right? That you don't show up perfect and then, offer these ministrations to others. It's really about showing up imperfectly and learning the whole way. So a little bit of 1555 all the time, a little bit of 555. So then we have the Two of Swords showing up in the protagonist position, but I feel like this is more so related to that choice. Like I think that you collected information and you made a decision. But I think though that there's maybe some way that I think that there's a way that you're trusting yourself more. Like I'm getting this integrative energy here, as opposed to just a statement about decision making and where you are in that process, right? I think that this is you kind of reflecting on what you've done in the past, in the ways that you've been indecisive, and what that's meant for you and the place that that's come from, right? It's not just reflecting on, oh, I didn't know how to make that decision at that time. It's reflecting on the fact that I didn't understand the information that was coming to me, and why is that? And going within to really look at the shadow and look at it, right? To really look at it. And, I'm probably going to talk about it in another video for the course in creativity, but just the idea that when we get quiet and we sink into our space, into the emotions, instead of running from them, when we feel things like shame or, we face our fears, and instead of running from them, we end up sitting with them. And what that results in is probably for the first time for many people. I know that with this particular process, it happened a bit yesterday where it's instead of running, you face it and you realize that was the part of you. And I'm seeing this here, I am not using this deck, but that's the card on top. So, I mean, that's the best way of describing this process, visually speaking. But it's understanding that you stop abandoning yourself. That's the key, is that you have to really sit with the places that feel the most uncomfortable and the least like they're helpful to you. Because when we feel something like shame, right? And, what if, and the whole idea for me yesterday was just this idea that there were people saying things and whatnot that weren't true, or there was like a way that it was being, that things felt, and this is not necessarily, this can reflect, this can really reflect where your energy is shifting and changing, and as it hits blocks, right? And it felt like spirit was like, I know that you can handle this next step, and just laid on the button yesterday. Just sat on the button because it was time, right? It was just time. But I think that once you face these places of judgment and shame and just behold yourself instead of running away, and sit with the anxiety and sit with the fears, you really see the part of you that not only you had abandoned, but that others did too at different times, right? And what that does is it allows you to really meet with that part of yourself, and in ways that, you can do inner child work, and you can do healing, and you can do work upon work. It just doesn't end, and it's a process to make peace with. But it's like learning to not just love yourself, but learning what it is about you that has value to yourself, not because you give to others, just your value, period, right? Just your value, period. And letting things burn off that don't need to be there anymore, like the sound of that, like it's like a 2 liter, in Canada we call it pop, but I've heard there's like a soda versus pop thing. I don't, but it's like you twist the top off and it just has this intense release of pressure. Or I'm hearing air brakes on buses, right? like that release. So I think it's, yeah, that's I was gonna say, it's like you're seeing the root causes here, and instead of cutting them out, you're letting them be, and you're allowing this to just be as is without needing to really do a lot about it. And it's really opening up a door for you internally that's allowing you, and just allowing, period. And I think that this is, in a way, opening up some of your heart space back to you. And the real challenge here was this Five of Pentacles. And I think it's just the perspective to hold about different energies afoot right now and things going on. And but I think this is really overcoming the idea that that life was passing you by, right? That life was passing you by. And if not passing you by, that happening to you in different ways, right? And it can slip in terms of perspective shifts and things like that we need to go through, and little bumps and triggers that we encounter within ourselves. Some bigger ones too, but it's like this energy was just, it almost feels like this energy, it's like this part of you, maybe, yeah, like this part of you was not being honored. It wasn't being honored, maybe. And I think too that in general, this is really just healing our relationship to external things, because we're starting to understand processes and energies flowing within us, right? And then awakening. So then we have the Judgment card, which, I mean, that definitely is all about that energy center awakening or shifting or clearing, right? The words that just came to mind right now were bigger than you. Like there's something that just, and I think it is in a way, because there's just different things that are shifting and changing right now. And then we have the Six of Wands here. Six of Wands, which can be, this is more of like the public facing success or public victory, which can feel uncomfortable, right? Like it can feel uncomfortable when people start to watch and look. And I know that I've had to work towards comfort with being seen in a more public facing way on here. And because I'm used to doing so much community work behind the scenes. So I'm very comfortable in like the behind the scenes, do the work to make the whole show run. But I'm good with other people, being in the spotlight and letting others shine. That's like, I'm comfortable there. So this was a departure for me, doing this channel and everything. So it's like allowing yourself to be seen, right? Allowing yourself to be seen. And I think this Six of Wands is that public facing fearlessness. And I see the star on top of the character's head in here. And I feel like that is, maybe in a way, some Aquarian energy. But I think that this is really just letting your light shine and doing it unapologetically, right? Doing it unapologetically. And that could be this Five of Pentacles and the Judgment card here. You're waking up to the fact that this is really important for you to do. And if not really important, that it's like, it's almost healing in a way. Eight of Cups and the Muse of Voices. Ooh, Death card. Yeah, so I'll just put this here. That's fine. So we have the Eight of Cups, and then and how apropos of the card for the eclipses that we just were in the midst of here. And then we have the Muse of Swords, which this is a card that's kind of been added to this, but I get this as like consciousness bridging energy in this deck. So it's like we're bridging consciousness from what we're leaving behind to the transformation thereof, right? And I think this is a really great place to end the day, because with this energy going into this, I get this sort of beautifully transformative energy, leaving things behind that need to be left behind, but doing so in a way that doesn't neglect our need to see the shadow of why we got there, what that means, and also the shadow within ourselves too, generally speaking, right? Because we can unhook things all we want, but we're just going to continue to repeat the patterns. And that can dredge up a lot of uncomfortable feelings, because you realize not only your fallibility, you also realize your humanity, and that you were maybe outside of integrity with different things that you wanted for yourself, right? And it can feel like it can feel like your priorities are shifting externally. So that happens. And then, it feels like it's almost like you want to make sure that people understand what's happening so that they don't make their own judgments, but it's a process that you have no control over anyway, right? So it's like I read these energies here intuitively, 7 of Swords and the 2 of Swords, as more healing this process within us, and then the Justice card, interestingly, that reminds me of this with this split right down the middle here, middle horizon. But then it's also and this could also just be like, I see the fox and like some trickster energy came out there for half a second. So it could be just being able to recognize, because you're going within to see your own self. What that's allowing you to do is to see energies that may not have your best intentions in mind, right? May not have your best intentions in mind. So this process is making that clearer to you. And then the 2 of Swords here is, part of the minor reflection of the Justice in the major arcana, which is a kind of cause and effect. So it's almost like doing this is setting off a chain of events, perhaps. Interesting that came out, but I feel like whatever that chain of events is, you're going to be just fine. I mean, you will be regardless, because you're you and you're here, right? You're you and you're here. Yeah. I mean, when I've kind of stared death down twice in my lifetime. And the first one was nearly being murdered. But then the second time I had a cyst on my ovary, and I went to the hospital and they gave me morphine, which I'm apparently very allergic to. I don't want to test that assumption, so we're just going to go with it. And every doctor that I've talked to has been like, yeah, that's it. But they gave me the morphine, and I started to lose. I knew that something was up with my heart, because I was like, something's wrong. And that sense, I've heard, and read later that is the sort of line that people say right before they pass out, or there's something very wrong. So it was cardiac shock that I went into, and I went unconscious, and my lips turned blue, according to the person that was in the room. And they were getting the paddles ready, because I had just completely flatlined. And I'm obviously here and fine. My heart is good. I run a lot. I take good care of my body. And when that happened, though, it sort of, when I came to, and everything was, all right after that, but I was laying on the gurney in the hallway looking up at the lights. And I remembered seeing the fluorescent lights through my eyelids and thinking to myself, do the people in my life know that I love them? Right? It was sort of like what actually is mattering? What is mattering right now? What is mattering here? And, that was also the end of the relationship that I was in, because it sort of just rearranges perspectives. And I say that with a chuckle, because it's we envision these different transformations and what we think life will look like, and then it ends up being so different, but how beautiful that is, right? So I almost feel like there's a way that this transformative process is not just highlighting what's most important, but I think that it's reminding you of what it is that you're made of. It's reminding you what you're made of a little bit with this sort of consciousness bridging energy here. It's not about it. In the end, it's not about the things that we leave behind. It's about what we do with it. It's about what we do with it. So how are we bridging this energy of the things that we are leaving behind and releasing and letting go? What are we doing with the energy? Where's the energy itself going? Are we, and making sure to discharge it for sure. But it's like, once we allow ourselves to be transformed, what are we choosing? What are we choosing? Right? And in some ways too, I almost get this being sort of, it's almost like there's this way of like covering, like this is that public facing thing, right? And looking at the fact that like there's different things, like there's almost like a shroud. I got the image of like a shroud, as opposed to just a scarf here, and this idea of a shroud not being over you, but in a way like trying to cover up parts of ourselves because we don't want people to see them, when realistically it can be written all over our behavior, the little nuances of things that we say or do and the way we do them. And I think it's just making peace with that and really holding space for ourselves. And beyond holding space, I think it's also about really embodying this like watery energy, right? This watery energy. I went to a conservation area I was kayaking at the other day, and that's where I went yesterday. And it was a place that I had never been to, but I saw this rail as I was kayaking by, and I was like, oh, I'm going to see where that goes one day. Well, one day was yesterday, and I kind of ran up the steep incline of the hill just to get the frustrated energy out. And then sitting up there, it was just about listening to the swallows and watching them from time to time, like dip down and back up to their nests. And it was much cooler than it was last week here, and so it got breezy. But just letting the clouds flow and letting the mind empty, and remembering that meditation isn't to control thoughts or to bring peace necessarily. When you get to a point, what I realized after the fact was that meditation is as much to quiet the mind as it is to reconnect with the eternal part of you, so that you can remember that the things that make you feel like your mind is so busy, right? And having all this information coming in at you, right? All this information coming in. It's more about connecting to the eternal part of you that doesn't need any of it to know who it is, right? And I feel like that applies to ourselves as well. So all of this to say, that's where I feel like this is transforming us internally. But I feel like there's more. I feel like there's a collective message somewhere in here as well. So I'm just gonna pull a few cards. I'm not gonna do my usual like massive clarifying thing here, but Spirit, what messages do you have to clarify for my creative collective, please? I'm hearing let yourself do things imperfectly. Yeah, Eight of Swords. Let yourself do things imperfectly. But I think too that this is freeing yourself from the mindset traps that tell you that it has to be a certain way, and also just what other people think. Like, we're good with standing in our truth. We're good with all of the ways that we show up until they get challenged by other people's thoughts about them. And I almost feel like that's what this is, right? This is like other people's thinking. This is other people's thoughts about what's going on. And I think that you really, in order to, like, this is the reason why is it's showing up together here, Six of Wands and Eight of Swords. I think the bridging consciousness energy here is really about understanding that at the end of the day, you're the only one that you're going to be facing in the mirror. You're the only one. So if you're right with you, that's really all that matters. That's it. That is it, right? And that's also, in a way, it's surrender, and it's unlocking a different layer to that, right? It's unlocking a different layer to that. And sometimes it can feel like Spirit is just like laying on the doorbell, laying on the doorbell. But that's because you're ready. And if you're not surrendering and you feel ready, your energy is going to be in such discord, or you will yourself back to sleep, but you won't be fully asleep. You won't be fully asleep, right? So it's going to create these real issues until you get there. King of Wands clarifying the Eight of Swords. I feel like right now it's important to, like, there's a way that your passion isn't changing. Like, your passions at their core aren't changing, nor are the emotions of it necessarily. But I think what is shifting is the way that you're relating to them and showing up for yourself in the process, right? Like, I see the King of Wands as like, okay, so now what are we going to do about it? Like I'm hearing creative visionary, right? Like seeing a situation and then wanting to alchemize it into something that it's like turning, I'm hearing metallurgy, metallurgy, metallurgy. Like you're taking something base metal and turning it okay, thank you, Spirit. That's but yeah, like you're shifting things and changing them, right? So we have the Four of Wands, the Five of Pentacles, and the Judgment card. The Hierophant. I feel like you're dedicating yourself to a spiritual path here, maybe. Could also just be like to a different, I'm hearing a type of wisdom. The Hierophant and the Hermit are kind of like where spiritual practice and the traditions of spiritual practice or praxis, the way that they come together in wisdom that's grounded, right? This is like wisdom that comes, that meets you on the path and that you integrate. So it's almost like a bit of a new way of being, perhaps, with the Awakening card here. And I think that you're understanding through, this could be different guides or teachers in this Four of Wands card that are really shining the light for you. And I think that you have to let the light be shone for you, right? Know who you are, yes, but just remember that it's okay to not know it all. And I mean, the Gemini in my chart is like, what? But it's okay to not know everything and to understand that you just can't. You just can't. I'm hearing patience. Blech. Oh my God. It's my favorite word, right? Yeah. So the Nine of Cups and the Ten of Wands. The Chariot, Tower, yeah. Lovers. Well, isn't that lovely? Speaking of Gemini, ta-da. So the Chariot and the Tower, I think this is like successful navigation of epiphanies, changes, things that will be shifting and changing. Ooh, I just felt like a pull on my solar plexus. So it could be that there's a way that you're navigating things and understanding what's best for you, but really fearlessly moving forward, right? Fearlessly moving forward. And understanding the difference between not letting things get in your way and meeting with the things that you would maybe see as being in your way as things that are reflecting a need to clear something within you. And I feel like that's, again, where this choice is showing up, right? This is the Gemini card and Mercury as well. But also it's a very, apropos sort of spread for a Mercury retrograde, right? Like it's kind of how that might look for some folks, right? We move through things and what meets us on the other side is potentially unexpected with the Tower. But at the same time, it's something that's deeply healing for us because we are doing the work of letting go and unhooking, but really alchemizing things along the way, right? Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative collective? Queen of Cups. I feel like there's something to do with the shadow work that you've done. The shadow work that you've done and your ability to kind of, I'm hearing Hermes, receive messages differently. And then the Queen of Cups here could be water energy coming towards you in terms of embodied in a person. This could also just be an aspect of yourself. You're becoming more emotionally available, which can be, it can be a whole bunch of different things, but it's so wonderful when it is because, you get into a place of we live in a world that is 24/7 on. It's just always on. And there's this way that it rewards achievement, but it doesn't ask whether the achievement made the person feel really happy, right? And what does happiness mean even? That's part of the inquiry as well, going within and saying, what makes you happy? What do you really want, right? And for me, I love doing this. I love offering guidance. I love talking about things that have happened to me in a way that shares that knowledge with others and makes use of it. Because if it happens to you and it hurts or brings you close to different edges of yourself and your awareness, and you don't share that knowledge, I mean, this isn't for everyone, right? But for me, then I feel like it's not that it will have been wasted, but I feel like that's something that I'm here to do because I haven't encountered all the things that I have without having some component of being able to help others through it and with it. So this Queen of Cups, Seven of Swords, and the Knight of Swords as well is almost like the emotional availability piece is because, when you're able to give yourself more compassion and to shine a more compassionate light for yourself, towards yourself, you're able to really ebb and flow with things far more. Yeah, wheel and the page of wands on the bottom. You're able to ebb and flow with yourself far more. And I feel like it's not just like water doesn't just represent emotion. It's a representation of consciousness. So it's almost like this awareness that you bring within that you can then take without. And it's coming from a more confident place. King of Pentacles. Yeah, it's like your emotions are really grounded. Your emotions are really grounded. Two of Swords. Yeah. All right. Okay. So we had the High Priestess and the Ace of Swords. There's like an intuitive truth. There's also your intuition is more on point than you know, right? I have moments of doubting my own, and I'll receive, like I'll channel guidance, but then I won't watch the videos back necessarily. But there are things in it that we all have wisdom that we need to take ourselves and that we need to take in, right? So this is also, I think about this sort of grounded emotionality. And the things that gives us access to within us, and it sort of calms the waves sufficient that we are able to access this High Priestess within us and this Ace of Swords. Like we're able to access these intuitive truths, and it's not just about accessing them, but it's integrating them in a way that maybe gives us choices that we didn't think were there, we didn't see were there. It raises our vibration and our level of consciousness to a different place, not because we're doing it just to high vibe and good vibes only, because like anybody who's been through any kind of spiritual awakening will tell you that it sounds like a pot and pan being thrown down the stairs, a concrete stairwell at times, right? Like it's not, it's not like you're riding a cloud with, it's just, no, it can feel like that. Yes. It can feel like that, but it's about how are we going to respond? It's about that response-ability, right? So I think that intuitively there are truths that are becoming more apparent, and I think this is not just true of one or two people. I think collectively we're reaching this point too, right? One of the things that I've had to honor about my own energy is the ability to tap into collective consciousness, and understanding not just what's mine and what's others energetically speaking, but what's mine and what is collective consciousness, right? Like it's almost like its own entity. But it's about understanding that boundary. So it's like figuring this out, and it's not just like cherry picking truths. This is really about understanding the complete picture. Like you're seeing a bigger picture. And I think that there's still things that you don't necessarily know. The High Priestess is a knowing card, which to me implies that there are unknowns. So when the High Priestess shows up, it's not because we're knowing things all of a sudden. It's because there's a piece that we're making, especially with the Two of Swords here, with what we don't know. And how interesting the intuition here. So remember I said there was a minor and major, or there was a minor arcana reflection of the major arcanas, right? Justice is the Two of Swords and the Ace of Swords. How interesting is it that justice is showing up in this High Priestess unification energy, right? That there's a sense of justice that we're gaining and getting from our intuition. And it's not just about, I have an idea, I have a hunch, I have a gut feeling, I have a knowing. It's really about understanding what to do with it beyond that, right? Because you can't just blast through with action and that's that, right? It's also about understanding what we're feeling in that moment. It's about understanding what we're feeling. And how that informs things too, because the High Priestess isn't just about this kind of like airy, ethereal energy. This is about emotions, right? Intuition is informed by, but equally informs emotions, and where that flows, energy goes, right? This is the relationship that we have between attention and our understanding of things. But there is, I feel like there's a path forward, and all of this energy here on the table is telling me that there's a path, there's a poem that talks about making the path by walking it, right? We make the path by walking it. And I think that one of the big components of this is understanding that there's stuff you can't see. There's stuff you cannot see. but that it is like and it's not about, oh, it's coming. It doesn't need to be seen right now, because if you were to see everything, it might knock you off your path, because you may not have the capacity right now to take all of that in, right? Um, and it's not about ability or skill. It's just that if your cup is too full, there's got to be this balance before you're able to integrate that energy within. There has to be a balance before you're able to take energy in, right? And if you're working through, ego things, and your vibration is raising, or ascension, that like that process, if you're anywhere on that on that step or steps along the way for ascension, um, it is not in your best interest to know the outcome, because this is that bridging consciousness energy, right? We make the path by walking it, but the bridge isn't like, all we need to be aware of is the transformation that we want a situation to take, or that we are interested in taking, right? And the dance that we do with all of the stuff in between, and there's the full moon energy as well on top. That's going to be the bridge, but you don't have to see the specifics, because the bridge is there. So just one step at a time. I'm going to pull from the Notes from the Universe on Love and Connection deck by Mike Dooley here. You've got time. And I get that this is like, don't feel like you have to rush through anything, because I feel like there's something happening that's much bigger. That's much bigger right now. The Sacred Convergence card, like this is like 5D stuff. Like there's stuff happening above and beyond that. And just understanding that you've got time. And you've got time, to me, because time is kind of meaningless if you think about it in the big picture. And from an astrophysics perspective, it's hilarious. But I think you've got time means that it's not just time that you have, but there's an expansion of your understanding of what the present moment is and means, because you're in it. So it's like when you're there, you realize that it's not that you ever lacked time. You didn't lack anything, right? You didn't lack anything. Sure, there were material things that were on their way to you and coming to you, but it's not about that though, right? It's not about that. And I think that part of waking up is realizing that time, it's not that it's an immaterial thing, because it is. That's not it alone. It's that time and our understanding to it and our relationship to it, when we heal that, not just in a calendrical sense or a scheduled sense, we understand time as like the bridge of this consciousness that we're crossing. It's like that time is that bridge. And we can get caught up. Time is also timelines, and how, all the things we should have been, or that we feel like we needed to be. When I was finished my master's, I thought, oh, I'll do a PhD. I could, I was like so sure. And then as I finished my master's, I was like, I do not want to do a PhD. No, thank you. Like there are topics of interest, but it just, because it's the different systems that you're buying into along the way that you have to play in to do that, right? And I just did not want to participate in them. And I recognized that there was more for me, which thank goodness I didn't, right? But it's almost like that would have opened up a whole timeline for me that may not have made this path available to me, and may not have made this path one that was healing to me, right? So yeah, and also understanding that generally speaking, everyone has an opinion. They're like, belly buttons. Like most people have them. Like, and so it's about understanding too that time, our relationship to it, can be shaped by what we think or how we prioritize other people's voices over our own, and what matters to us in here, what matters deeply to us. So, Spirit, what messages do you have? Earlier disappointments were just rehearsal for the great stuff coming your way. Yep. There's some Neptune in there too, I see. Yeah. I think this is patience, right? And when you believe that you have time, you don't need to rush through a process, because it's all going to happen as it's going to happen. And so much of the time, things are outside of our control, but we believe differently. And so we get caught up in these ways of being, in these habits that sort of pull out and pull our energy outside of us, not in a way that clears energy, but that gives it to other people, right? It's like that's why I did that calling back your energy meditation quite early on in this channel, is because I wanted to offer something that allowed people who, for various reasons, like myself, many times, like, and more significantly a while ago, but just needing to really call our energy back to ourselves, because we're investing it externally, and it's not that there's no right or wrong way, right? There's a both and always at work in the universe. But it's almost like it opens up a part of you. And I think that it's really important to sit in the both and right now, to sit in the both and. I'm hearing act as if as well. Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative collective, please? And also understanding too that, when people have different opinions or thoughts, it's never about you. It's never about you. Yeah, it just isn't. And when you set boundaries or do specific things, it's okay to let that go. Like, it's okay to release the need to respond, right? Because then that allows you to respond from a place that's more honest within you. And again, like, I go back to the deleting the comment that I made. It was just, it was reactive, because I just felt this, like I said, like spirit just sitting on that button, and I wanted it to say what I needed to say. But at the same time, it's understanding that, even then you can get it wrong, and that's okay. And that there's nothing wrong with course correcting and taking responsibility for the way that your energy may have gone like outwards, right? And as long as it didn't harm anyone, it's just sitting in the ether in that way, right? Yeah. There's always a solution of the highest good. I think it's the Marie Forleo book that's Everything is Figure Outable, which I love. Yeah. I trust that my gut reaction is the truth underneath the surface of my fears. Yeah, and this is about trusting the intuition, right? Trusting our intuition and understanding that we don't have to figure out the whole picture. It's not going to come to us all at once, but that there's something really important about letting the pieces come to us as they will, and letting them in, right? Letting them in so that we don't face down these towers and go, what the heck happened? Like, because towers will happen, but there's also ways that we can place a tower in reverse, where we're like pushing it off and I'll do that another time. I don't need to meditate. I'm too busy. I don't have to do that. I can, I'll just get takeout tonight, right? And like, through all of the past, like the things that have been happening the past couple of months for me energetically, it just doesn't appeal quite the same, right? Like, it doesn't appeal quite the same, because it's going to leave you empty, right? So it's these practices and things that we get into that that kind of it's that spiritual practice piece, right? So just remembering what that means, right? Remembering what that means, and letting other people have opinions, and letting other people do them, and unhooking from the unhooking from that, right? Unhooking from that. I'm reminded of a video that I watched last night, and I cried a little bit while watching it, but just it was a video that Lori Ladd had put out about the soft power of you, and just the humility to look at everything that people might say and just be okay with it. And I think that that's such a huge part of meeting ourselves on this path, right? Meeting ourselves on the path. And it's not about refusing to abandon ourselves, behaviorally speaking. This is a much higher take on it, where we can go within and see the ways that we would have pushed away this tiny human inside of us, right? This inner child, this tiny being that just needs love, that just needs care. And these can be parts of ourselves that we push away or feel ashamed of, or we're shamed for. And then they can come crashing together in this, sacred convergence. But instead of running from it, when you just sit with it and face it and just stop running, when you stop, that's why yesterday I didn't put any content out, because I just needed to listen to that beautiful stop, that beautiful pause, and listen to what was being said. And you really begin to realize that when you're able to hold that tiny human in you, you really don't need to, the voices or opinions of other people aren't as loud anymore, because you're meeting yourself and you're saying, you know what, I love you, this inner child, right? I'm looking at this card again. It was in my pile over here, but it's like you're looking at this part of you and saying, you know what, I don't need to abandon you anymore. And I won't. And I won't. And that's how we make the gentle commitment to ourselves to not just stick with healing processes or spiritual paths, but direct the sails ourselves, as opposed to allowing others to do it for us, right? So maybe this is a message not to abandon yourself. But my hope is that there will be more consistent messages this week, after a little bit of a wobble in some consistency. But yeah, so and then this weekend I will be visiting family. So I have a date with my granny. So I will be kind of maybe putting out fewer videos next week as well, but we'll see how that goes. But for the daily creative, I want to be able to put that out for folks at the very least. So I'm doing my best, friends. I'm doing my best right along with you. So I hope that this resonated, and wherever this finds you, my wonderful, wonderful viewers on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, I hope that it finds you very well. Take care. And through all this ridiculous energy, just know that I'm rooting for you, right? We got this. We got this. Take care.